I always believed loyalty was something you could feel, like warmth in the air when someone truly loves you. When Ethan looked at me, I felt that warmth. Or maybe I wanted to. I remember the night before it all began. He kissed my forehead, told me he had a big meeting the next day, and I wished him luck. I even ironed his shirt that night, the white one he said was his good luck charm. The next morning, he left early, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. I stayed behind, humming to myself, thinking how lucky I was to have a husband so hardworking, so devoted. He always said, "I do this for us, Mia. For our future." And I believed every word. Later that day, I decided to surprise him, nothing big, just a simple lunch. I packed his favorite sandwich, the one with too much cheese, and thought maybe he'd smile when he saw me. I wanted to see that proud look in his eyes, the one that said, "You're my reason." As I walked into his office building, I noticed people greeting each other, smiling, laughing, busy lives, busy dreams. I felt a little nervous, like I was trespassing into his world. I asked the receptionist where Ethan Miller's office was, and she smiled politely. "Oh, Mr. Miller? He's in a meeting right now." I said softly, "That's okay. I'll just wait." She nodded, but then asked, "And you are?" I smiled, "I'm his wife." Her smile froze for a second. "Oh," she said, confused. "I didn't know Mr. Miller was married." I laughed it off, thinking maybe she was new. But deep down, something inside me whispered, why didn't she know? While I waited, I looked around, framed awards, photos of company trips, laughter frozen in pictures. I searched for Ethan's face, and there he was, smiling, holding a trophy, standing next to a woman I'd never seen before. She was beautiful, confident, her hand resting on his shoulder like she belonged there. My chest tightened. I told myself not to overthink it, maybe she was just a coworker. But something about the photo, it didn't feel professional. After a few minutes, a tall man in a navy suit walked in, his presence filled the room. "Oh, you must be her," he said, smiling warmly. I stood, unsure what he meant. "I'm Ethan's wife," I replied, holding the lunch bag like it was my shield. His smile faltered. "Wife," he repeated quietly, like the word didn't make sense. Then he chuckled nervously. "I must have mixed it up. Sorry, I thought you were Claire." The name hit me like a slap. Claire. My hands went cold. I forced a laugh. "No, I'm Mia. Ethan's wife." He nodded quickly, avoiding my eyes. "Right, of course. My mistake." But his tone, it wasn't a mistake. It was a cover. I could hear the guilt in it. Before I could ask, the office door opened. Ethan walked out, all charm and smiles, until he saw me. His face drained of color. "Mia? What are you doing here?" I tried to smile. "Surprising you," I said softly. "Brought you lunch." The boss gave him a look, half pity, half warning, and quietly left. Ethan's hands trembled as he took the bag. "You shouldn't have come," he whispered. I blinked. "Shouldn't have come?" "Ethan, what's going on?" He looked everywhere but at me. And in that silence, I realized something. Whatever I believed about loyalty, I was about to watch it shatter. I remember how quiet that moment felt. Like every sound in the room disappeared, just his breathing, uneven and heavy, and mine, trying not to break. He placed the lunch bag on the desk, avoiding my eyes. I could see his mind racing, searching for words that wouldn't make everything worse. "Ethan," I said softly, "why did your boss call me Claire?" He froze, jaw tightening, lips parting, no words. Just silence. The kind of silence that tells you more than any confession ever could. I took a step closer. "Is there something I should know?" Finally, he spoke. "Mia, it's complicated." I laughed, but it wasn't joy. It was disbelief. "Complicated?" I said. "That's what people say when they've already destroyed something simple." He rubbed his temples. "She's just someone I work with." "Work with?" I repeated. "Funny, because your boss seems to think she's your wife." His shoulders slumped, like the lie was too heavy to carry any longer. "It's not what you think," he muttered. "Then tell me what to think," I whispered. "Because right now, my husband, the man who said I was his everything, suddenly looks like a stranger." He finally looked up, eyes full of guilt. "Mia, please. Don't do this here." I stared at him, realizing how small I felt in that big, cold office. Everyone outside probably heard us, maybe even pitied me. But I didn't care. "You've already done it," I said, voice shaking. "You've already broken whatever this was." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "Don't," I said. "Just don't." The truth was, in that instant, I wasn't angry. I was empty. Because betrayal doesn't always explode, sometimes it just quietly unravels everything you thought was real. I left his office without looking back. The hallway felt longer than it was, every step echoing like a reminder of everything I'd just lost. People stared, pretending not to, but I could feel their eyes. I clutched my bag, trying to hold myself together, trying not to cry in front of strangers. Outside, the sunlight felt cruel, too bright for a moment so dark. I sat in my car, hands trembling on the steering wheel. The lunch I'd made with love sat untouched beside me. I stared at it, then at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes looked different, not softer, not loving. Just tired. My phone buzzed. "Ethan." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because what could he possibly say? That it was all a misunderstanding? That Claire was just a slip of the tongue? No. Some mistakes have names, faces, and perfume that isn't yours. I started the car, but my hands refused to move the wheel. Instead, I just sat there, listening to the sound of my heart breaking slow, steady, cruel. Then I saw her. The woman from the photo. Walking out of the building, laughing with a coworker. She looked so alive, so confident. I wanted to hate her, but all I felt was this deep ache, the kind that says, she probably doesn't even know I exist. For a moment, our eyes met. She smiled politely, not knowing she was smiling at the woman whose world she'd unknowingly stepped into. I smiled back. What else could I do? As she walked away, I whispered to myself, I thought he was loyal. The words burned in my throat, but saying them out loud made it real. That was the moment I decided I wasn't going to beg or cry or demand explanations. Sometimes, dignity is the only thing you have left. So I put the car in drive and left. Not just the building, but the version of me who believed loyalty was forever. That night, I didn't sleep. The bed felt too big, too quiet, too cold. Every tick of the clock felt like it was mocking me, counting the seconds since I stopped being the woman he loved. I kept replaying the day in my mind, his face, that hesitation, the way he said, "You shouldn't have come." Those words echoed louder than any confession could. My phone lit up over and over again. Calls. Messages. "Mia, please talk to me. It's not what you think." Let me explain. But what could he explain? That his boss just accidentally called me by another woman's name? That the photo I saw meant nothing? Or that I imagined the panic in his eyes? I didn't reply. I didn't have the strength to. Instead, I got up and started cleaning the kitchen, the living room, anything to stop thinking. Funny how when your heart breaks, your hands just need to do something, as if wiping away dust could erase memories. I found his coffee mug on the counter, the one that said "World's Best Husband." I stared at it for a long time and then quietly placed it in the trash. No drama, no shouting, just a silent goodbye to a lie. At around 3 a.m., I sat by the window. The city lights blinked in the distance, and I whispered to myself, maybe love isn't about loyalty. Maybe it's about who stays honest when nobody's watching. A tear slid down, and I let it. For the first time in a long while, I didn't stop myself. Because healing doesn't start when you forgive them, it starts when you finally feel what you've been avoiding. And in that stillness, I realized something. I wasn't broken. I was just waking up. The next morning, I saw his car parked outside. He'd been waiting. Probably all night. I stood by the curtain, watching him hold his head in his hands, guilt written all over his face. For a second, I almost opened the door, old habits, maybe. The part of me that still wanted to believe him. But then I remembered the look on his boss's face. The hesitation. The silence that screamed the truth. He knocked once. Then again. "Mia, please," he said through the door, voice trembling. "Let me explain." I stood still, heart pounding. 5 years, I whispered to myself. 5 years, and now he needs to explain? He kept talking, words blurring together. I made a mistake. It's not what you think. She doesn't mean anything. The usual lines of a man caught in his own lies. I finally opened the door. He looked up, relief flooding his face. Mia, thank God, he said, stepping closer. I held up my hand. Don't. He froze. Tell me, I said quietly, why did your boss call me by her name? Just once, tell me the truth. He looked away. His silence told me everything. Was she worth it? I asked. Was her attention worth throwing away your marriage? Mia, he whispered, I didn't mean for this to happen. I nodded slowly. Nobody ever does. He reached out, but I stepped back. You know what hurts the most? I said. Not that you cheated, but that you made me doubt my own instincts. You made me feel crazy for noticing what was right in front of me. Tears filled his eyes, but I didn't care anymore. Leave, Ethan, I said softly. Go explain it to her this time. Maybe she'll believe you. When the door finally closed behind him, the silence was deafening. I just stood there, staring at the empty hallway, the echo of his footsteps fading away. It's strange how a single sound can mark the end of everything you once believed in. I walked to the mirror. My reflection looked unfamiliar. Eyes swollen, lips trembling, but beneath all that pain, there was something else. Something fierce. I'm done, I whispered to her, to the woman in the mirror who'd stayed quiet for too long. No more excuses. No more waiting for someone who already left. My phone buzzed again, messages pouring in like rain. Please, just talk to me. You're overreacting. You know I love you. I didn't reply. I blocked the number. The peace that followed felt strange, like a wound that finally stopped bleeding. Later that evening, I went for a walk. The city looked the same, but I wasn't. Every light, every sound felt sharper, clearer, like I'd stepped into a world I had ignored for years. People passed by laughing, living, loving, and I realized something. I had forgotten how to live for myself. I had built my whole world around someone who didn't even value it. When I came home, I lit a candle and sat by the window again. The same spot where I cried the night before, but this time, the tears didn't come. Instead, a calm settled in. I whispered to myself, one day, I'll thank him for breaking me just enough to rebuild myself stronger. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. Not because everything was okay, but because I knew it would be. A week passed before I heard from him again. An email. Long, desperate, filled with apologies and promises that meant nothing now. I read the first few lines, then stopped. It's funny, once you find peace, chaos doesn't tempt you anymore. I didn't reply. I didn't need closure from him. I had already given it to myself. Instead, I poured my energy into something new, me. Morning walks, quiet coffee, the sound of music filling my apartment again. I started writing, not to publish, just to remember. To reclaim my story. Friends noticed the change. You look different, one of them said. Happier. I laughed softly. No, not happier, I said. Just free. One evening, I passed by his office building, the place where everything fell apart. The same glass doors, the same polished floors. But this time, I didn't feel anger. Just gratitude. Because now I understood love isn't about possession. It's about truth. And truth doesn't hide behind lies or other women's names. I walked past without looking back. Somewhere inside, the old version of me, the one who begged, cried, and waited, quietly said goodbye. That night, I wrote in my journal, healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to smile without pretending. As I closed the book, I realized something beautiful. Pain doesn't destroy you. It introduces you to the parts of yourself you never knew existed. And that's when I knew my story wasn't about betrayal anymore. It was about becoming whole again. It had been 2 months since I walked away from that version of my life. 2 months of learning how to breathe again, how to wake up without checking my phone, how to make coffee without waiting for someone to share it with. And in those small, quiet moments, I found something I didn't expect: peace. But peace has a way of testing you. It arrived one morning when I got a letter, an actual letter, handwritten in familiar handwriting. His. My hands trembled as I opened it. The paper smelled like his cologne. For a second, the memories came flooding back, late-night talks, laughter, promises that used to mean everything. Then I started reading. He wrote, "I miss you. I made the biggest mistake of my life. Please meet me one last time." Not to ask for forgiveness, just to explain. I stared at those words for a long time. My heart whispered, "Don't do it." My mind said, "You need to hear it for closure." That evening, I sat on the couch, holding that letter like it was a ghost. Every part of me wanted to burn it, but something inside said, maybe this time, you need to face him not as the broken woman, but as the woman who healed. So I decided. I'd meet him. Not to get answers, but to show myself how far I'd come. The next morning, I stood in front of the same building, his office. The place that once shattered me. Only this time, I wasn't trembling. I wasn't scared. I was ready. He looked surprised when he saw me. For a second, he didn't know what to say. His eyes searched my face, maybe looking for the version of me he broke, but she wasn't there anymore. He said softly, "You look different." I smiled. "I am." We sat across from each other, two people who once shared a life, now strangers bound by old memories. He began to speak, his voice shaking. He talked about regret, about sleepless nights, about realizing too late what he'd lost. I listened, quietly, without interrupting. When he finished, there was silence. Heavy, but not painful. I looked at him and said, "You know, for a long time, I thought I needed closure from you. But I don't. I already gave myself that." His eyes filled with tears. "Can we start over?" he whispered. I shook my head gently. "No. But thank you for showing me who I never want to become again." I stood up. No anger, no bitterness. Just peace. As I walked away, I realized something powerful. Sometimes healing doesn't come from answers. It comes from finally walking away with your head held high. The sun hit my face as I stepped outside, and I smiled to myself. For the first time, I wasn't someone's wife or someone's heartbreak. I was just me, and that was enough. Weeks passed after that meeting. I didn't feel emptiness. I didn't feel loss. What I felt was space I had never given myself before. Every morning, I'd sit by my favorite cafe window, watching people rush by. Different faces, same stories. And I thought, maybe that's what healing is, realizing the world didn't end with your heartbreak. One afternoon, the barista said, "You're here often. You must really love this place." I smiled. "It's the peace I come for." That's when I noticed him, a man sitting across the room, sketching in a notebook. Every time I looked up, he was there, drawing quietly, lost in his own world. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, our small glances became polite smiles. Then one morning, he walked up and said, "You always order the same thing, caramel latte, no sugar. You must like balance." I laughed softly. Maybe I'm just afraid to change what's finally working. He smiled. Sometimes change is the best proof that you've healed. We talked for hours about art, music, little things that didn't hurt to remember. He never asked about my past, and I didn't ask about his. It was peaceful, effortless. As I walked home that day, I realized how different this felt. No pressure. No expectations. Just two souls sharing a quiet moment in a loud world. And for the first time, I thought, maybe my story isn't ending. Maybe it's just changing chapters. Our conversations became routine, not out of habit, but comfort. He'd bring his sketchbook, I'd bring my journal. Two strangers who had found a kind of calm together. One evening, it started raining, heavy, beautiful rain that turned the streets silver. We stayed inside, sipping coffee, watching the world blur outside the glass. He said, "Do you ever think about the people who broke you?" I smiled faintly. "Not anymore. I just thank them silently. They taught me what real peace feels like." He nodded, drawing something in his notebook. "You remind me of light," he said softly. "The kind that doesn't blind, just warms." I laughed, trying to hide how those words touched something deep. "That's poetic." He smiled. "Maybe it's true." When the rain stopped, we walked outside together. The air smelled new, like everything had been washed clean. At the corner, before parting ways, he said, "See you tomorrow?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, tomorrow sounds nice." As I walked home, I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of love, not of being seen, not of being alone. Because this time, I wasn't waiting to be chosen. I was choosing slowly, gently, myself first. And that night, as I closed my eyes, I whispered, maybe love isn't about forever. Maybe it's about finding someone who reminds you how to live again. The days that followed felt lighter. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something just as rare. Peace that came with laughter. A connection that didn't demand anything. We started meeting outside the cafe, weekend walks through the park, quiet dinners, little pieces of normal life I'd forgotten how to enjoy. He never asked about my past, but one evening, as we sat by the lake, he said gently, "You've been through something heavy, haven't you?" I nodded. Yes, but I'm learning to stop carrying it. He smiled softly. Good. Because you deserve to walk freely. Those words stayed with me. Days turned into weeks, and I started noticing small things, the way his eyes softened when he listened, the way he waited before speaking, as if words mattered. It felt safe. Almost too safe. And maybe that's why the fear came back, the quiet whisper in my mind asking, what if it all falls apart again? One evening, I canceled our plans last minute. Told him I wasn't feeling well. But the truth was, I was scared. He texted, "It's okay. Take your time. I'll be here." No guilt. No pressure. Just understanding. And in that simple message, I realized, maybe love isn't about fireworks. Maybe it's about the quiet promise that someone will stay when you need space. A few days later, I decided to face the fear. I called him and said, "Can we talk?" We met at the same lake where it all began. The sky was painted with sunset, gold melting into blue. I took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something," I said. I was married. He lied, cheated, broke something inside me. I don't know if I can trust again. He didn't look surprised. Just calm. "I know," he said. "I could see it in your eyes the first day." My heart tightened. "Then why didn't you say anything?" "Because healing doesn't need questions," he said softly. "It needs patience." Tears filled my eyes. Not from sadness, from the gentleness in his voice. He reached for my hand. "I'm not here to fix you. I'm just here, if you ever want to be seen again." For a long moment, we sat there, the world around us quiet. I finally whispered, "That's all I ever wanted, to be seen, not repaired." The sun dipped behind the trees, and I realized maybe the heart doesn't need to be whole to love again. It just needs to be brave enough to try. Everything felt steady for a while, gentle mornings, shared laughter, quiet evenings filled with stories that didn't hurt to tell. It felt normal, safe. But healing isn't a straight line. Sometimes peace stirs up old fears. One evening, I walked into the same cafe, the one where we first met, and saw him sitting with a woman. She leaned in close, laughing softly. His hand rested near hers on the table. For a moment, my chest tightened. The old ache, that familiar rush of doubt, came flooding back. I froze, watching from the door. My mind whispered, "Not again. Please, not again." Before I could think, I turned around and walked out. The cold air hit me like a wave. My heart was pounding, my breath shaking. I wanted to believe he was different. I needed to believe it. But suddenly, every word, every promise felt fragile again. That night, I sat by my window, the same spot I once cried over another man's betrayal. The candle flickered, shadows dancing across the room. And I whispered to myself, "Not this time. I won't fall apart this time." My phone buzzed. A message. "Where did you go? I saw you walk past." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My heart needed silence more than explanations. The next morning, there was a knock at my door. I hesitated before opening it, and there he was. He looked worried. "You left so suddenly. Did I do something wrong?" I crossed my arms, trying to steady my voice. "Who is she?" He blinked, confused. "At the cafe? That was my sister." I didn't respond. The doubt still burned in my chest. "You expect me to believe that?" He sighed, pulling out his phone. A picture flashed across the screen, the same woman, laughing beside him, and an older woman. "That's my mom. We were planning her surprise birthday dinner." For a moment, I felt small. Ashamed. He looked at me gently. "I'm not him. You don't have to keep fighting ghosts." Tears welled up. I'm sorry, I whispered. I just forgot what trust feels like. He stepped closer. Then let's rebuild it slowly. Together. And something in me softened. Not because he forgave me, but because he understood without judgment. As he left, I looked at the door and smiled faintly. Healing wasn't about being unbreakable. It was about learning that sometimes people stay. The days that followed felt lighter. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had stopped running from my fears. He didn't ask for trust overnight. He earned it slowly, with quiet consistency, small gestures, honest words, showing up when he said he would. And in that simplicity, I began to heal again, not from heartbreak, but from the habit of expecting it. One evening, as we walked through the park, he stopped suddenly and said, "You know, sometimes strength isn't about standing alone. It's about letting someone stand beside you." I smiled softly. "I'm still learning that." He looked at me, really looked, and said, "You don't have to rush. I'm not going anywhere." Those words hit deeper than any declaration of love. Because this time, it wasn't passion that made my heart race, it was peace. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about everything, the lies, the pain, the loneliness, and how somehow all of it led me here. To this moment. To a version of me that wasn't broken anymore. I whispered into the quiet, maybe I had to lose everything to finally find myself. And for the first time, I didn't cry when I thought of the past. I smiled softly, gratefully, because even the worst heartbreak had a purpose. A year later, I found myself standing in front of the same building where everything once fell apart, his old office. It was empty now, a new company had moved in. I stood there for a moment, remembering the woman who once broke in that lobby, who once believed her world had ended. She was gone now. In her place stood someone softer, wiser, stronger. Someone who had learned that love doesn't always come to teach, sometimes it comes to heal. My phone buzzed. A message from him, dinner tonight? Same place? I smiled. Wouldn't miss it. As I walked away, the city lights shimmered like tiny reminders of everything I'd survived. Love hadn't saved me. I had saved myself. And in that strength, I had finally found love again, not the kind that fills the silence with promises, but the kind that sits quietly beside you, holding your hand when words aren't needed. At that moment, I knew this wasn't just the end of a story. It was the beginning of a life written by me for me. I looked up at the night sky, whispered a quiet thank you to the universe, and walked forward, not as someone who had been broken, but as someone beautifully rebuilt. Because sometimes, the most powerful love story is the one you write with yourself.